The subject of a mark that controls whether one can buy or sell arises from the biblical book of Revelation. So we must look to that source to discover what that mark is. Here's the passage in question. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Now, before we go running off into the sunset looking for this mark, let's stop and consider the obvious and most fundamental point in understanding this mark. The mark is of the beast. Yes, it's the beast's mark. Any mark from any other source cannot be his mark. While it is popular to focus on barcodes, social insurance numbers, tattoos, and computer chips, we must first focus on identifying this beast if we are to understand his mark. So who or what is this beast? We'll begin in Daniel, the 2nd chapter, and verse 31. You, O king, were watching, and behold a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Daniel explained to the king that this figure of a man represented 4 kingdoms. The head of gold was his Chaldean empire. History shows that the 3 that followed were the Medo-Persian, the Greco-Macedonian, and the Roman empires. Notice that this prophecy covers the time from Nebuchadnezzar all the way down to the second coming of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, and the setting up of his kingdom. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. Let's now go to Daniel 7, where it elaborates further on these 4 worldly empires. This time, rather than an image of a man made of different materials, we find these same empires described as 4 wild beasts. The first was like a lion with eagle's wings, the second like a bear, the third was a 4-headed leopard, and the fourth was, as we see Daniel 7 verse 7, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Verses 17 and 23 clearly show that the words king and kingdom are used interchangeably. And as in chapter 2, this 4th kingdom ends at the return of Christ when he sets up his kingdom. Notice it in verses 26 and 27. But the court shall be seated, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and destroy it forever. Then the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Nebuchadnezzar's image is explained as 4 kingdoms beginning with Nebuchadnezzar's and ending with God setting up a kingdom on this earth. We're told that the 4 beasts of Daniel 7 represent 4 kings or kingdoms, and the 4th ends with God's kingdom. So these beasts clearly represent the same 4 kingdoms as those mentioned in Daniel 2. The stone cut out of the mountain without hands is clearly a reference to the future, when the returning Jesus Christ sets up an everlasting kingdom. At that time, he destroys mankind's empires by smiting the king's great image on the feet and toes. Therefore, the feet and toes of iron and clay must be in existence at Christ's return. Notice Daniel's God-inspired explanation of the feet and toes in Daniel, the 2nd chapter, beginning in verse 41. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. That's the state of the Roman kingdom at the end of the age. As we shall see, there will be 10 nations that do not adhere to one another, but they do so for a very short time out of necessity, and they have the strength of iron. But how can this be when Rome, the fourth kingdom, fell more than 1,500 years ago? For the answer, we must turn to the book of Revelation, the 13th chapter. Here we find another creature, but this time a single beast with the characteristics of those found in Daniel 7. Those characteristics are all combined into a single creature. Why? This is because John recorded this vision in the late 90s AD, at the time of the Roman Empire, which had absorbed the other three kingdoms. Notice this description. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. But again, Rome fell more than 1,500 years ago. How can it then be in existence when Christ returns? Note that this beast has 7 heads. Compare this with Daniel 7, where the 4 creatures also had a combined 7 heads. Revelation 13, 3 and 5 explain that one of the heads had a deadly wound that was healed. Since the only empire in existence at this time was Rome, the head with the deadly wound that is healed is that of Rome. A deadly wound and healing of the Roman Empire is exactly what we find in history. Rome fell in 476 AD, but the empire was restored or healed by Justinian in 554 AD. We now turn to Revelation, the 17th chapter, where the healed Roman Empire continues. There we find another 7-headed beast, but this beast is different. It only refers to Rome after the healing, and it has one very significant difference. It is Rome ridden by an immoral woman. Beginning in verse 1, Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and talked with me, saying to me, Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. In the Bible, a woman is sometimes used as a symbol of a church. Concerning the marriage of a man and a woman, we read in Ephesians, the 5th chapter, and verse 32, This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. In Revelation 19, verses 6 and 9, it describes the saved as the bride of Christ. But in the case of Revelation 17, we see a fallen woman, an apostate church, a mother church with her harlot daughters. Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. This Roman Empire, whose deadly wound was healed in 554 AD, had 7 heads and is ridden by an apostate religious system. Furthermore, we learn that after the healing it would continue 1,260 years. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed, and he, that is this Roman beast, was given authority to continue for 42 months. That's from Revelation 13, verses 3 and 5. A prophetic month is made up of 30 days. 30 days times 42 months comes to 1,260. Now, the Bible sometimes uses what is called a day for a year principle. In this case, the beast would continue after its healing for a period of either 1,260 days or 1,260 years. The context in history shows us that it is the latter, 1,260 years. History reveals that the Roman Empire, now ridden by an apostate church, was restored by Justinian in 554 AD. The empire diminished and was revived 4 more times. The second restoration came in 800 AD when, on Christmas Day, as Charlemagne knelt before St. Peter's altar in prayer, Pope Leo suddenly produced a jeweled crown and set it upon the king's head. After Charlemagne, the empire again deteriorated, but was revived a 3rd time under Otto I. Like Charlemagne, Otto received his throne through the papal claim that the Roman Church had been the only imperial elector since the early 4th century. The Holy Roman Empire was thus to a large extent German in its ethnic and political base, Christian in its moral justification, and Roman in its claim to legitimacy and universality. Charles V and Napoleon constituted the 4th and 5th restorations. From the healing under Justinian in 554 to the fall of Napoleon in 1814, we have, get this, exactly 1,260 years, as foretold in Revelation 13 and verses 3 and 5. Revelation 17 tells us that there would be 2 more revivals after the 5 during the 1,260 years. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Rome is built on 7 hills. There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, that was between 554 and 1814. One is, that's Hitler and Mussolini, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short time. The one to come will be made up of 10 kings or nations with the strength of iron and the fragility of clay. This will take place in the near future, and when it does, remember where you heard this. God is not happy with those who take the beast mark. It's a sign of disobedience. It cannot simply be a computer chip or barcode. It's the beast mark, and the beast fights against Christ at his return. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. That's Revelation 17, verses 12 and 14. It may surprise you to know that the Bible speaks of another mark. Few people realize that God gave a sign that identifies his people. Read it for yourself in Exodus, the 31st chapter, and verse 13. Speak also to the children of Israel, saying, Surely my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you or sets you apart. Some wrongly reason that Jesus changed the Sabbath to the first day of the week. But the Bible and early church history show that Jesus, his apostles, and the first century Church of God continued to observe the day God sanctified at creation long before Moses. As we read in Genesis, the 2nd chapter, and in verse 3, Then God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. And Jesus declared to those who are misapplying the Sabbath that the Sabbath was not done away with, but it was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath. Now think about this. You're not Lord of something that does not exist. Satan also has a sign, a mark, that identifies those who are his. Daniel 7 speaks of a stout horn which can be connected to the woman who rides the beast of Revelation 17. Here's what Daniel 7:25 reveals about this horn. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Notice that it says, intend to change times and law. It was not Jesus or the Apostle Paul who changed the day of rest set aside by God at creation. It was Roman Emperor Constantine who changed the Sabbath to Sunday. From Erdman's Handbook to the History of Christianity, the Christian Sunday was not made a day of rest until Constantine decreed it in AD 321. Constantine was a sun worshiper. When in 321 Constantine made the first day of the week a holiday, he called it the Venerable Day of the Sun, Sunday. But what about the mark being placed on the hand and in the forehead? Doesn't this suggest some kind of visible mark or computer chip? We must not read into the Bible our own ideas. We must let the Bible explain its own symbols. A sign on the hand and forehead does not suddenly appear in Revelation. Far from it. This symbolism is used as an identifying sign of obedience to God. Referring to an annual festival given by God and later kept by Jesus and the early church, we read in Exodus 13 and verse 9, "To be as a sign to you on your hand and as a memorial between your eyes, that the Lord's law may be in your mouth." And after repeating the 10 Commandments in Deuteronomy 5, we read in chapter 6, "You shall bind them," that is God's commandments, note this, "as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes." Just as God places His sign on our hand and forehead, so the great counterfeiter's beast has his mark.